I think this is trip number 4 to the hardware store to get plumbing materials. How am I supposed to show my plans now? What does that say? 1.64? 1.04? I can't read my own handwriting. Do you know? You don't know. He doesn't know.
We were young and we were free and running, never bothered about what could be coming. Every day we danced and life was smiling. We were young and drunk in love.
Hello everyone, welcome to this week's vlog. We've got projects to do. So I moved my list out of my notebook into a place where Max and I can kind of work on stuff together because we're slowly going to start chipping away at what we have listed on the wall. So I've tried to kind of group them together. So we have like the wash stall and the front blanket room kind of on this side because some of them cross over, like hooking up the water. And then we've got stuff we still need to do for the tack rooms, stuff we still need to do for the stalls, more paddock stuff, minus the fencing, and I'll get into that in a minute. I've got to winterize the chicken coop still, some insulation on the doors, just kind of in and around the barn. Some stuff outside. If we don't end up getting to like cleaning up the trails, that's fine. That'll be for next spring. Let's see here. A bunch of organization projects. And then down here, assorteds, other projects that are not super priority. But so that's what we kind of got going on for this fall/winter. And what I like about this method is that it can be, we can change it up quite a bit, because I was finding myself in my notebook or on a piece of paper just like remaking lists and lists and lists, versus this one we can kind of just change post-it notes around, and then when you're done you can take it off the wall and you can visually see the projects go away. I'll have to circle back to more about the post-it notes and the fencing and whatnot because I'm off to trivia tonight, and it's the night before Halloween, so I'm going as a Louvre robber, and 2 of my friends are in like princess dresses, so I'm stealing their jewelry. But ignore the 9 bags of grain in my car. I went and got them this afternoon, but I didn't have time to unload them before my lesson, before I had to leave for this tonight, so that's just gonna stay in here for another night. I also have some not put away yet Amazon boxes. Picked them up from the gate this afternoon, but I haven't had a chance to bring them inside. And a couple of them are birthday gifts, which I'll be very excited to show later as well. All right, happy Halloween, everybody. Let's talk about the issue that we ran into while I'm waiting for my work computers to boot up this morning. So this property is a part of a conservation easement. I think it was 2 owners ago, the guy who put it in. And we really didn't mind it being in a conservation easement because our intended purpose for the property was, it aligned with what the restrictions were. We like the program. We think it does great things. And we also, because of the easement, it opened doors for us to be able to buy this property, because there were people who looked at it that they wanted to do things that weren't allowed to do because of the easement. I think the easement also lowers our property taxes, which is great. So we didn't care. We thought it was great. Like I said, it opened doors for us to be able to even get this property, which I don't think we would have been able to otherwise. So a part of this easement is a thing called a building envelope. So it's basically where you are allowed to build. Dane County has a really fabulous GIS map that you can use for drawings and whatnot. So that's how I've been figuring out where we want to put our paddocks and whatnot. So the building envelope is essentially here up to this fence line up there and then down here. And then you just have to contend with a little bit of floodplain, not much. It basically just follows this fence line. And then these like dash marks are where the wetland falls. This little G on the end there means you can graze on it. So that's this is our building envelope, which is why house, barn, arena, all the run-in sheds, machine shed, all falls kind of within this little guy. The only thing that's not in the building envelope, and it was grandfathered in, was the bridge that goes across the stream, which I don't know if you can see it on here. Let's see. Ah, there she is. There's the bridge and the boardwalk that goes across, that's grandfathered in. So our easement has pretty broad language because it was an earlier easement for the Conservancy. And so when a representative from it came out and we did a tour of the property, we talked about like, well, what does this actually mean? Like, what can we do? We want to be a good steward of the property and like align with the easement while still be able to use the property for the means in which we want to use it. And that he said, yeah, it's a lot up it's a lot up to interpretation of what exactly some language means. So, for example, it just says no structures outside of the building envelope. Well, what's a structure? And so we discuss things like run-in sheds are, it has a roof, even if it's a temporary thing and not like in the ground, it has a roof. Basically, water can't get through. That is a structure. But fencing's okay, which is great because we wanted to expand pasture back more into the hayfield, and there is already fencing outside of the building envelope as it was. So that's great. And so we wanted to put our outdoor back in the hayfield. Basically, what we wanted to do is we wanted to put a laneway here and then put a nice big outdoor right here and then flank it on either side with extending paddocks anyway. So we would have rough board paddock, stalled horse paddock, rough board paddock, nice big outdoor. And then we'd still have couple acres of hayfield kind of left over for riding or if we wanted to do hay, but we wanted to put it there. And we wanted to put it there because it's a great space for it. It's nice and flat. We could have had a pretty big outdoor there. It was very symmetrical with the property, so that looked really pretty. So it just kind of made sense for it to be out there. Well, in doing my due diligence with the Conservancy, I reached out to the representative and I was like, hey, this is okay, right? Like it doesn't have a roof. And he came back and said, no, we interpret that as like a roadway or a structure or something. Because we would need to grade it, we'd need to bring in a base, and we bring in sand. Now to us, that's I need to get my language right. Pervious surface. I don't even know if that's a word, but basically water can get through it. Like that's the whole issue. But he was like, nope, it changes too much to the landscape of the land. That's not something that you can put out there, which is like really frustrating because like that's the idea that we had. Now, it's not the end of the world. If it was going to be the end of the world, we would have asked more up front and not as we were kind of putting things together. But I'm glad that we asked because I would have hated to be like halfway through this building project next spring and then have them be like, no, you can't have it back here, and then have it be an issue. So pluses and minuses. And we also asked too before we started doing a lot of the fencing work because it really changes like what we were going to end up doing. So our original plan for paddocks, I went over a little bit when I just showed the where the outdoor was going to be. But then in this front field, just to kind of finish off what I was saying, is we were going to put a split down here and then have another stalled horse paddock. So we were going to have, I guess I can zoom out a little bit, like 2 and then 4 and then 6, and those are going to be our stalled horses, and then this would remain a pasture board group, and like I said, pasture board up this way and then pasture board up that way. So that was going to be our original pasture design. So now with that information, we need to figure out where we are going to put our outdoor. And we have some constraints also that we needed to account for when deciding on a spot. A fairly standard outside or an outdoor arena is like 100 by 200 for feet. We wanted something a little bit bigger, but minimum 100 by 200. And then, like I said earlier, we also needed to watch out for this wetland space right there in that corner. We also didn't want something that was super close to the road. We're on a fairly quiet country road, but we still get, oh my goodness gracious, we still get like semis that go by on the road way too fast. We have motorcycles a lot on the weekends, and there was even a motorcycle crash the other day. We also need to keep into account where water and electricity falls on the property to make it easy to get water out and then also plug in tank heaters in the winter. And then we also wanted to have the gates like somewhat close to the barn so you weren't walking to Timbuktu to go get a horse, especially in the dead of winter or when it's raining. So we have a water pump in the blanket room in the front. We have a water pump over on this side, and then we have a water pump just behind the barn. And then for electricity, right now we have a plug there. I think there's a plug in somewhere over here, and then there's one here, and then one there. We also have to work with our run-in sheds. So we have one here, here, and here that we use for horses. There is another one right here, but we use it for storage. In some of the initial paddock designs that we did for the property before we moved in, I was playing around to see if we couldn't try to include that somewhere, but it takes up a lot of like good turnaround and driving space and whatnot. That's just gonna end up being storage, which is fine because you can always use storage on a horse barn. Yes, we have these 3 sheds left. and we don't want to build anymore because run-in sheds are actually like really expensive, and we haven't looked too much into moving them. But I think that would be kind of more effort than it's worth. Like it's better for us to just figure out the paddock design based around where these sheds are, as opposed to trying to move any of them. And then there is also the constraints of needing to be able to get off of this area to the other parts of the field. So currently this pathway goes back to trails. Max uses the gates from here through this dry lot to here to this flat path to get back to spread manure. So we couldn't completely box ourselves off in terms of pathways to get away. So we would either have to keep this one open, make one that goes straight back, or make one that kind of goes up and over across this line to get to those existing trails. So then what I did on the GIS map is they have a really great drawing tool. So I was able to measure out the sizes of things because we also wanted a certain amount of acreage or square footage for the paddocks. That was important to us, that we have a decent amount of space for each horse. We could have shrunk down some of the paddock sizes to make them a little bit smaller, especially for the stalled horses, but that was important to us that we had big paddocks. Okay, so then from the mapping out on the GIS map and getting the information straight, I printed off some pages, I showed it earlier, and then drew them up to get a different looking visual. You can see it on the computer, it just gets a little messy with all the measurements on there. So these were the ones that were worthy enough to even make it 2 pages, and they even weren't, ended up being our favorite. So let's talk about them. So, and it's not in order of how they were done. So this one, we still had our pasture board up this side, our pasture board up that side, and then 2 splits there. And then we put the outdoor here. There's like a 10-foot buffer, but then that can get us a 140 by 190 because this is where the wetland starts and kind of goes over. This would give us a 1 acre space here, which is a little small, but that's fine. For like 2 or 3 horses, the baby horses, and then a retiree who can't eat much grass are in this group, so that would be okay. And then we would just do a little bit of a split up here. And then there is a gate, I think right there already. I have yet to confirm. So I think this little pinch point would be annoying and maybe a little bit muddy, but it's an appropriate enough space, and that was an option. We also can't go in this center area because our well is over here, and then this is a gate and then a driveway in. So we wanted to keep that open because that's the best way to get trailers in and out. And we do also have this space over here behind the house, but we really wanted to keep that open just to keep things away from the house. So this was option 1. We didn't love that we couldn't get a full 200 down. We got extra width, which is great. But again, you're just like next to the road, even with a buffer. So from the road, this right here would have been our outdoor. I think come out to maybe this one. So just perspective wise, maybe it looks like a trapezoid, but right there would be our outdoor, which would be fine. It would look like a lot. Okay, so then we have this one, same kind of design in the back. And then we would do this same split. So basically it'd be similar to what we were planning before, minus the laneway to get back. And then we would put in outdoor right here. And this would give us, what does that say, 1.64? 1.04? I can't read my own handwriting. But basically, again, an acre, maybe an acre. Yeah, it's probably an acre. And that's fine because it gets everything kind of close for electricity and water. Though this has a little bit of a grading issue. So the orange marks on this, it's a little hard to see on the camera. These orange lines are elevation. So the further apart they are, like this big gap right here, the flatter it is versus the closer they are, like over here, the steeper it is. Now that's not very steep. If we come up here, let me move my... You can see that those lines are super close together. That means it's pretty steep. So this is still a pretty gentle slope coming down this side. But I think even that much slope would end up being kind of costly to grade it, to be able to put in the outdoor there. And then we had this variation of a plan. So we currently have a group of 3 geldings that live over here, and then we have a group of 2, and then eventually the 3rd mare who's on a stall board right now because we don't have a fence line to put her. Let me pause there. So right now, the fencing for that is like this little area, and that's where the 2 rough board horses are living. And then we have like this square, and that's where Bella and Fern are as well. And we want to put Fern in with this group, but we want a little bit more space for the horses to be able to get away from each other to do intros, especially for mares. So we need to be able to get some sort of split or somewhere to put Bella elsewhere so that we can open this gate, which Max has already installed, and to be able to let those 3 out. So that's what that is. Okay, so anyway, so we have a group of essentially 3 mares there, and then we have a group of 3 mares that live down here, a retiree and 2 babies. Basically a group of 6 mares. Okay, all that rambling to say is we could do one big group of mares because we have the 2 sheds. This plan's a little bit annoying because there's a lot of existing fencing right here that we would have to kind of take down or work with. Outdoors still go here. This one I had it pushed all the way to the road, and then they would either share this whole space or these dotted lines is to show how we could like patchwork it together, and then the other stall board would go up here. So I think we came up with this plan. I was thinking about it this morning as I was like making my tea and whatnot, so I haven't printed it out and like drawn it, so I'll just have to share what it looks like on the drawings with the computer. Okay, so what I was able to measure is that this line here is a little bit longer than this side. So what we can do, this is about 70 feet-ish. I just kind of eyeballing it based off a post. So what we can do is we can fit 3 sections of like 62 feet across, which makes, and then with the 300-foot long section is we can get a 0.4 of acres here and here, which is a little bit less than that, but still a great size for 2 horses. And then we keep the pasture board kind of going back there and back there. That's all normal. And then that's something that we can do this fall. So then we have enough spots for all of the horses done for what we need. And then come next spring, we can figure out if we want to try to fit in the arena here or the arena here, and we can get someone out this fall to get quotes. So we get kind of a general idea. Because if the grading is not so expensive over here, this is a great spot. We can fit like a 115 by like a 250, like that's a great size. And then this still ends up being 1.3-ish acres, which is a good size for that. And then we keep kind of a nice look from the road of horses, and we just tuck that back in there. We would just have to adjust this fencing a little bit to keep the laneway because it kind of comes over and through that, which ends up being fine. We wanted to do some sort of an adjustment here because for Max to get the manure spreader from the pit out to the backfield to spread it is he would have to put these horses somewhere else and then bring it through this gate here, through the paddock, through that gate to get out through. Now, we can get back to the backfield through the trails, but it kind of goes down a hill and then up a hill. So for the manure spreader, it's just easier to hit that laneway. So we're gonna have to make some adjustments in this area anyway, so that is not a huge deal to have to take out some of this fencing. But again, that can be a next spring thing because this isn't going in until next spring. I sent that design to Max. He's been out doing chores and whatnot. So I hope that he likes that plan. It gets us to be able to do fencing this week, this fall, to get it finished, and then kind of go from there. So we'll see. That's the plan. Hopefully he likes it. We'll figure it out. Well, this has been a rough morning. Max and I forgot to close the chicken coop door last night. First time since moving here, and 3 of our 5 chickens have died. I think it was either a raccoon or a skunk because they were just missing their heads, and raccoons and skunks just eat the heads. The other 2 birds I have are fine. And I know people who are looking to reduce their herd size, so I will get more birds this fall because I don't want just 2. I think that'd be very lonely for them, especially if one also happens to die. I don't want an individual bird. So it's very sad. I love those chickens. Anyway, Max hung up a motion sensor light, and I think like our coop is pretty secure. It was just the whole door was wide open all night. I'm so mad because as I was walking in kind of like late afternoon, I looked at the door and I was like, I'll be out later. I'll close that. And then I just didn't come out later. So I'm gonna kick myself for a while for that one. But anyway, back to farm projects. I walked out to the back of the barn to see the horses because from inside the barn I could see a bunch of deer, like 10 deer with bucks and whatnot, like running around in the field. But by the time I got out here, they're gone, but I'll try to catch a video if I see them again, because that's pretty fun. Horses didn't even lift their heads from grazing. All right, let's talk about fencing. So I thought we were able to get fencing done this weekend. False. With us taking a minute to try to figure out what we wanted to do, and then yesterday it kept raining on and off, so we didn't really want to do fencing work in the cold rain. So we didn't really get much done farm project wise this week, but that's okay. We needed a little bit of a break. Today we are shipping a horse, and then I think we're going to try to tackle the wash stall. Max needs one more piece. I think this is trip number 4 to the hardware store to get plumbing materials. So I think that's going to be our try to get done project this week, and then next week we'll get fencing done now that we have our plan. So online, like I showed earlier, measured out what spacing wise for the paddocks, but it looks one way online and it looks another way when it's out in the field. So I'm just gonna walk out the number of steps and just get a feeling for how big the paddock spaces will be. Because online numbers look great, but it just may look too narrow. Let me do that. So I walked the width of the boys' paddock, and that was about 22 steps. My steps are about 3 feet, and I know that they're 3 feet because that's how we walk distances for lines when jumping horses. So I walked another 22 steps, and I'm about here, like halfway through the shed. I think when I measured it, what? Very upset. You have hay, you have water. She says none of her friends are right here though. They're there, too far. So I think when I measured it, it looked like it was supposed to align right with the end of the run-in shed there. I feel like that's a good space. All right, let me walk the next steps. So unfortunately, the gate that Max put in for our original plan right there falls just a little bit too far. But I think what we could do is maybe, to not have to do too much, is just put a post like over here-ish where that T-post is. The T-post is there because when the gate swings open, we wanted to attach it to something to hold it. But anyway, put a post in here, kind of re-end the line like you did there on that post, and then just have the gate swing this way. That might work. I'll have to ask Max about that. Okay, decided that the sizing works out well enough that we're just gonna run a line from the big post that Max put in for the new gate down, and then we're gonna split the difference down this line, and we'll split that in 2, and then we'll put a new gate off that post. Hold on, it's the one before it, so that one, that right there. For the second paddock, and then that water that's currently for these girls will move closer here. We'll have one next to the gate, and then we'll put the second water for the that rough board paddock with Luna and Felicity over there, kind of where Luna's standing, so that we can easily get to all the waters, because the round pen that Caterpillar is in will not be there forever. It's just for, I think, another week. I think we decided after the 9th that she can go back out with her herd, which would be good. And then if we have to put up a future round pen for this kind of situation, we can just scooch it over a little bit, maybe more here-ish or more next to the shed or something. So we have space for it. But good, I'm glad we got that settled. And then Max and I were also talking that we think cost-wise, we're gonna have to put the outdoor in the front part of the field as opposed to putting it in the nook. Because again, when you look at it on the computer, you're like, that's not much contour. And then you actually look at it over in there, I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be a lot of fill to bring in. So we will just put it kind of in that front corner in front of the dry lot there that our newest arrival, Lacey, right there, is in. And we'll do that next spring. So we don't need to touch that paddock this fall. That'll give us a little bit of a break to do fencing. So we only have to do 2 lines, 1 gate, which shouldn't be too bad. I think Monday's supposed to be pretty good weather. So hopefully we can just knock it out and get it done. And then also, while I'm talking about it, the sizes with the fields. If we ever needed a horse that for whatever reason needed an individual paddock, which we hope not, it's nice for them to have buddies. But if they need an individual, because of the paddock that Trevor and Lopi are currently in is going to be bigger than the other two. That one we could probably split, not lengthwise, but widthwise. Just make like a little laneway or whatnot to get to the second gate, and we'll do 2 individuals in that paddock. But for now, we're just going to have groups of 2. So for my birthday, my mom got me a little cat house, and then I put out some food and water because we've had a couple stray cats come by. And Peregrine's waiting for a new friend. And you're being very annoying. For riding Trevor this week, I tried out a new bit. So normally at home, I will have him in just a simple loose ring, the mouthpiece being just a straight rubber piece across. It's called a Barris. But for this week, I ended up putting him in a voucher or a hanging cheek bit that had a happy mouth 3-piece mouthpiece to it. And I changed it up because we've done a lot of work on the flat, and with no horse shows coming up, I was like, sure, let's change something and see how it goes, see how he likes it, and learn a little bit of information. He loved this bit. I think this is the most favorite bit I have ever ridden this horse, and he seemed super, super happy in it. And I thought I was able to ride kind of a lot better in it. I didn't want to nitpick as much. I was able to kind of push him more into the bridle, not so much worried about him inverting. It was great. So I'm really happy that I tried it. And so for jumping this week, I used the time to just kind of get used to how the bit rode over fences, and if I kept the same great feeling that we had on the flat the first day I tried it. And I think we did. And I was able to really focus on his straightness and getting into the corners and keeping his pace without inverting. So I was really, really super happy with the lessons for this week. So Thursday, we just kind of jumped around on some courses, getting a good feeling. Nothing too complicated about what we were doing, and he was super. On Saturday, we did a lot of repetition, and so you'll see some of the videos I have fast forwarded through some of the parts just kind of get through them a bit quicker. So each direction, we basically just repeated that same vertical on the quarter line over and over, changing things a little bit each time. So we came at it from the very end of the ring, we cut off the end of the ring and changed our track, we increased our pace, we decreased our pace, we just kind of kept trying to vary it, but also doing the same thing. And that's great for building stamina in the horses without it's not a lot of wear and tear on them. And then it's great for the rider's eye and getting comfortable with different tracks and pieces and whatnot. So it was really fun exercise, and also great for getting to know this bit by changing things up and doing things differently. And then when we finished with the last jump of the exercise, we just went and did something different. So this direction, we came around and did the oxer across the diagonal, and then did line up the outside. It ended up being a 2-stride to the placing pole, and then going the other direction, Max changed the placing pole to the out. And that's just to give the horse something else to think about. Been circling over this one fence for quite some time, so it was just kind of made something new for them to get out of the pattern. We actually did the left lead first. I'm not sure why the videos got switched up, and then I just never fixed them in the editing part of it. So you'll see it when we end up finishing the pattern and then going to the diagonal across the middle that Trevor just clobbers it. Lopi did as well. And that just goes to show the importance of when you do a pattern to then do something different, because they weren't even thinking about it. Our fault as the riders to not make it a little bit more of a distinct, like, no, we're going to this fence. But I thought that was pretty funny of both boys having that one down. And then when we went around and did the exercise to the right and continued to the oxer, I felt Trevor have the kind of that same like, are we really going to this one, or are we circling to the jump on the outside? And I was able to use a little bit more leg and be like, no, we're going to the oxer, and then he jumped it a lot better. So learning experience. Womp womp, Grand Prix horse right there. And then he finished up lovely over this line. So great lessons this week. And the trail camera on the bridge caught a couple interesting creatures this week. So that first one was the barred owl and then a raccoon. Claire got her long-awaited coyote pictures, and then we also had a deer as well. Alright, so we're back at Home Depot to grab a few things. We grabbed a little bit more insulation because we noticed there's some gaps in the one tack room, the old one, not the new one we put up. And then we've got some of these bolts because Max is going to build little hay huts to store hay outside of the pasture board paddocks. And then we've got this insulation and then this to weather strip up some of the doors. And then he's getting more concrete screw stuff because we got a heater for the other tack room that needs to be hung up on a concrete wall. And yeah. We have a list of a few other things that we have to get, but we took my car tonight, so we don't have room for it. Like, we want to get some like plastic siding for the chicken coop to winterize it, and Max needs some like 2x2s, but it's too long to put in my car, so I'll have to come back another day. But this, oh, and then the actual reason we came is we needed to get these polyaloe tees, plumbing to finish hooking up the hot water so we can get the wash all finished tonight. So we can do at least one project this week. Oh, you can tell winter's coming. It's so chilly. Hi, ponies. All right, so we're back at home. Max has been working on the water heater, and I've been working on it, sending partial lease contracts to clients and whatnot. So he looks like he got all the piping done in the blanket room there. I'll show that in a minute. And then he hooked up the hose to the spigot, and it looks like he's testing stuff, I guess. Do you know? You don't know. He doesn't know. Okay, so that's the water he got set up last time, or the piping he got set up last time. And then he finished it. And then that's the piece we ended up buying today. So it splits so that cold water can go to the cold water spigot. And then it also can go into the water heater. And then out comes the red. And then the red goes to the hot part of the spigot. And then with the hose attached here, you just spin the hot and the cold, and you kind of mix to get your desired temperature. So this is the hose we'll end up using for the filling the water buckets. Sorry, I feel like my camera's shaking because I'm cold, so I'm shaking. But anyway, so we'll use this hose for the water buckets inside. It previously was just attached to the hydrant in there that we now have the water attached to. So yeah, and then obviously this is the wash stall. So we'll have hot water finally, because let me tell you, these horses need some baths. They are disgusting, or at least mine is. This one right here is really gross. I also need to wash my brushes, but I don't want to do it in cold water because my hands will get cold. And it'll also be nice because then we can make our tack cleaning bucket water also warm, which will be nice for winter. So we have to hang cross ties. We have to hang a saddle rack and halter hooks and a hose reel. And that'll be done. Right, Caterpillar? Right? And Bella? Yeah, I want a little bit of night check hay. We bought these hay nets to slow them down eating wise, but they eat fast. They eat a lot. All right, so that's what we're gonna call it for this week's vlog. Not a ton of projects this week, but we did some little odds and ends to kind of keep kicking. So with the lights out at the paddocks, the like automatic motion sensor ones, We figured out what we want to do for our fencing. I got the rest of our projects kind of organized so we can keep track of them. Max hung a little heater in this room. We purchased things that we needed for projects going forward. And then just recently he got the water hooked up. I don't know if he's gonna figure out the water heater tonight, but at least it's hooked up. He hung, I can't remember if he did this week or last week, but I don't know. He hung the heater at the very end of the barn, that side. We just have to get the electrician out here to actually hardwire it into the fuse box. Yeah, fuse panel. Fuse box panel? Fuse box. Yeah. Fuse box. Let's go with that. And then farm odds and ends. Chores every day. With the stalls and making grain and taking down and setting up new courses and dragging the ring and moving horses around. We had a horse leave us today. A pasture boarder decided she did end up wanting a stall for the winter, and since we have few stalls here to offer, we want to reserve them for full training clients and not retirees. So she left us for the winter. Max shouldered that horse today. And yeah, so it was kind of a nice breather week for us, but we have stuff we need to get done. The two kind of highest priority items are finishing the wash stall so that people can use it, and then getting fencing in because it's now November and it's getting cold and winter is coming, and we have 2 lines of 300-foot fencing each, so 600 feet of fencing that we need to put in. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week looks pretty good weather-wise. So, but with daylight savings time getting dark a lot earlier, we got to put that in. And then the rest of the projects we can kind of filter through, like putting up the insulation on the doors and building the hay huts and doing all that. But we have large squares arriving next week, which would be great because then we'll stop using up all our small squares quickly. So tune in next week to see what farm projects we get done, hoping it's the fencing.
I feel like going too soon now.